Hello students, welcome to the session 5 of solutions chapter, in which we will be talking about vapor pressure of liquid solutions. Last session we have talked about vapor pressure of a solution in which a liquid is added with a non-volatile solute, which will be solids generally. Now, what happens to the vapor pressure of the solution when two liquids are mixed to prepare a solution? Solvent as well as solute are liquids here. However, before I start off with this topic, a small but very important correction from my last session's lesson. Please observe this. While giving you the definition and factors affecting vapor pressure, I must have told you that vapor pressure increases with surface area of the liquid. It was a little inappropriate analysis I have done. See, generally when surface area increases, rate of evaporation increases. Keeping that in mind, I must have told vapor pressure also increases, but has to be corrected in this way. That is, see, vapor pressure is an equilibrium pressure. Means pressure exerted by a vapors of a liquid at liquid vapor equilibrium. Now, because of increase in surface area, if rate of evaporation increases, automatically along with rate of condensation also will increase, right? As a result, the net change of equilibrium composition of vapors will be the same. So, number one. And number two, if due to increase in surface area, if number of surface molecules are increasing, so that evaporation can be increased, the amount of surface on which they have to exert the pressure also is increasing. Since pressure is force by area, both force due to number of vapor particles as well as area of the liquid, both are increasing proportionately, so pressure remains unchanged. Conclusion: vapor pressure of a liquid is independent of surface area of the liquid. So, this is the correction you need to make to your knowledge from what I have taught you yesterday. So, vapor pressure is independent of surface area of the liquid because, I repeat, if surface area increases, number of particles on the surface may increase, so rate of evaporation may increase, but proportionately rate of condensation also will increase, and the area on which pressure has to be exerted by those molecules also will increase. As a result, vapor pressure will remain the same. So, vapor pressure is independent of surface area of the liquid. Please make that correction. Okay. Now, let us go to vapor pressure of solutions prepared by dissolving one liquid in the other liquid. See, yesterday the discussion was very easy that to a liquid which is volatile component, you are adding a solid which is a non-volatile component. So, one of them is ready to evaporate. And because of this addition of solid, the extent of evaporation was decreasing. The number of particles in the surface are decreasing. As a result, vapor pressure also is decreasing. Whereas, here you have taken both the liquids and liquids are volatile. That means, you are preparing a solution using both solute and solvent as volatile components. That means both of them will be contributing to the pressure of the vapor pressure of the solution. Whereas previously, when you add non-volatile solid solute, only solvent contributes to the vapor pressure of solution. Whereas here, both solute and solvent contribute to the vapor pressure of the solution because both of them are volatile, both of them produce vapors. So, whether you take liquid phase or vapor phase, you have the composition contains both particles of both solute and solvent. The proportions may vary. That depends on how you are mixing and which is more volatile, which is less volatile, which has more vapor pressure, which component has less vapor pressure. Likewise, depending upon many aspects, the relative proportions, that is the concentrations of vapors may be differing, but both of them will be contributing to the vapor pressure of the solution. So, Raoult's law in this case, we had a Raoult's law for vapor pressure of solution containing non-volatile solute. Now we are discussing Raoult's law for vapor pressure of liquid solutions, and Raoult's law for liquid solutions states that vapor pressure of each component in a liquid solution at a given temperature is directly proportional to its mole fraction. Whose mole fraction? That component's mole fraction. So common sense. Suppose I have dissolved two liquids named A and B. Now, according to Raoult's law, vapor pressure of A is directly proportional to mole fraction of A. And vapor pressure of, let me write this side. Vapor pressure of A is directly proportional to mole fraction of A, and vapor pressure of B is directly proportional to mole fraction of B. And as we discussed in previous case, the proportionality constant in this case also will be the vapor pressure of pure solvent. So vapor pressure of A is equal to vapor pressure of pure solvent A into vapor pressure of mole fraction of A. That means vapor pressure of the component A in solution is equal to vapor pressure of A when it is pure, when it is not mixed with anything, into mole fraction of A in that solution. Similarly, vapor pressure of the component B in that solution is equal to vapor pressure of B as a pure solvent or pure liquid into mole fraction of B in that solution. Now, please understand, two components are there in the vapor phase. That's why each one is contributing to the vapor pressure of overall solution. That's why each one of them I can call it as partial pressure. Because total pressure of solution will be due to pressure exerted by A as well as pressure exerted by B. So I can use the word partial vapor pressure of A is equal to vapor pressure of pure liquid A into its mole fraction in that solution. Partial vapor pressure of B is equal to vapor pressure of pure liquid B into mole fraction of B in that solution. That is Raoult's law for liquid solutions. Clear? Now, see, no difference. Important. See, relation is same. Only thing is, their vapor pressure of the total solution was related to only mole fraction of solvent, because solute doesn't contribute to any vapor pressure. Whereas here, we are talking about vapor pressure of each component separately in the solution, because both of them contribute to the vapor pressure. Therefore, if I call, you know very well, Dalton's law of partial pressure you have studied in states of matter first year. Dalton's law of partial pressures. According to Dalton's law of partial pressures, you know very well that total pressure of a mixture of non-reacting gases is equal to sum of the partial pressures of all the gases inside the mixture. Yes or no? Similarly here also, you have got mixture of vapors produced from that particular solution. Solution contains both liquid components and both of them are evaporating, and in the vapor phase, you have got vapors of both components. As a result, this is exerting some partial pressure, this is exerting some partial pressure. Therefore, vapor pressure of solution, which I will simply call it P, or for our convenience, let me call it PS. So, vapor pressure of solution PS will be equal to PA plus PB, that is partial vapor pressure of A plus partial vapor pressure of B, which I can further write it as PA naught into XA plus PB naught into XB, right? Now, what we can do here is express the vapor pressure of total solution with respect to any mole fraction of any one of the components. Because you know very well, if you know mole fraction of one component, mole fraction of the other component is 1 minus this much. So, that way, by considering, say for example, let me take in the place of XA, let me take 1 minus XB. Substitute here. Then PS will be equal to PA naught into 1 minus XB plus PB naught into XB. So I am expressing mole fraction of A in terms of mole fraction of B so that I can express vapor pressure of total solution with respect to any one mole fraction of any one of the components, not both. So taking this inside, PA naught minus PA naught into XB plus PB naught into XB. The final expression comes out to be vapor pressure of solution is equal to, see, this minus this, right? So I can take XB common from both these expressions. So PB naught minus PA naught into XB plus PA naught. PB naught minus PA naught into XB plus PA naught. This is how, by substituting XA by 1 minus XB, that is mole fraction of one of the components A by mole fraction of the other component B, I can express vapor pressure of the total solution with respect to mole fraction of only one component B. Same way I can derive by taking in place of XB 1 minus XA. If I do the same derivation, I will end up getting PS is equal to PA naught minus PB naught into XA plus PB naught, you will get complementary relation. Clear? Now, from Raoult's law for liquid-liquid solutions, we arrived at the fact that both, partial pressures of each liquid component, partial vapor pressures of each liquid component is product of vapor pressure of pure liquid and its mole fraction in the solution. Now, according to Dalton's law of partial pressures, we know that total pressure will be equal to sum of the partial pressures of non-reacting gases. We can apply the same thing here, and substituting mole fraction of other component, one component in the place of both of them, I arrived at two expressions, which are complementary to each other, of course. Now the question is, what are the conclusions we can make from this expression? Let us understand. See, conclusion number one that can be drawn from this expression is vapor pressure of solution can be related to mole fraction of any one of the components. That is first thing. That is obvious, and that is where I started the derivation also. So, vapor pressure of solution can be related to mole fraction of any one of the components, first aspect. Second aspect you can notice, vapor pressure of solution varies linearly with mole fraction of any component you take. Vapor pressure of solution varies linearly with mole fraction of any component. You can see PS related to XA or PS related to XB. So PS will be varying linearly with XA or XB. Now, third, very important, it varies linearly, but whether it decreases or increases, that is the question, right? So, PS decreases or increases with mole fraction of a given component, depends on relative values of PA naught and PB naught. Depends on relative values of PA naught and PB naught. Let us understand this a bit better. See, what do I mean by this statement? First two statements you must have understood. It is very evident. Vapor pressure of solution decreases or increases with mole fraction of a given component will depend on the relative values of PA naught and PB naught. Let me make you understand that by taking a simple context that PB naught is greater than PA naught, let us assume. Vice versa, you can analyze yourself. Let me analyze, assuming PB naught is greater than PA naught, that means B is a more volatile liquid than A. Because vapor pressure of pure liquid B is more than vapor pressure of pure liquid A. That means I am telling you that B is more volatile than A. Assuming B is more volatile, substitute in any one of the formulas. See here. When PB naught is larger than PA naught, when you substitute here, what happens? This gives you a positive value. When this gives you a positive value, something gets added to PA naught, where you can clearly understand that vapor pressure of solution is greater than PA naught, because you are getting vapor pressure of solution is equal to PA naught plus something, some value X. Understood? Same way you substitute here also. See, if you substitute in the second equation, what happens? PS is equal to PA naught minus PB naught you have. We have assumed that PB naught is larger. So this whole value comes negative. So something gets subtracted from PB naught. Therefore you would get PS is equal to PB naught minus some value X. Which proves that PS, vapor pressure of solution, is less than PB naught. Are you understanding? So if among the two, if vapor pressure of pure liquid B is greater than the vapor pressure of pure liquid A, then vapor pressure of solution will be greater than PA naught and vapor pressure of solution will be less than PB naught. Means, please understand, vapor pressure of solution would have lowest value equal to that of PA naught and vapor pressure of solution would have highest value equal to that of PB naught. That means vapor pressure of solution lies in between PA naught and PB naught. Is that clear? Now from this relation only you can clearly understand whether vapor pressure of solution increases with XA or decreases with XA, increases with XB or decreases with XB. Clear? I can make it much clearer by drawing a graph. Let us do that. Say I am drawing a graph of vapor pressure on the y-axis and mole fraction on the x-axis. Vapor pressure on the y-axis, mole fraction on the x-axis. Okay. Now assume here vapor pressure of mole fraction of A is equal to 1, mole fraction of B is equal to 0. Means from left to right we are going with decreasing mole fraction of A and increasing mole fraction of B. So at the other extreme you can say XA is equal to 0 and XB is equal to 1. That means logic is simple. I took pure liquid A and initially there was no liquid B. I went on adding B, so that the mole fraction of B is increasing further. If you study from this end, if you are understanding from this end, I started with pure liquid B, went on adding A and the mole fraction of A is eventually increasing. Okay, but mole fraction of one of the components being 0 is theoretical. If you understood that, then let me draw a graph for this scenario only, where I have assumed that vapor pressure of B, pure liquid B has more vapor pressure than the pure liquid A. For these details, let us draw a graph here. So what happens? When mole fraction of A is 0, the vapor pressure partial pressure of A will also be 0. Now as the mole fraction, because we have understood partial vapor pressure of A is directly proportional to mole fraction of A. So as the partial mole fraction of A increases, partial vapor pressure of A also goes on increasing and reaches a point here. Now you understand, when you are talking about vapor pressure, partial vapor pressure of A at mole fraction of A is equal to 1, that means mole fraction of A is 1 means you have pure liquid A, nothing else. That's why this point represents PA naught for you. Similarly, initially partial vapor pressure of B is 0 at this point because mole fraction of B is 0. As you proceed, mole fraction of B is increasing continuously and reaches maximum here because mole fraction of B is 1 here. That means it represents pure liquid B. That means this point represents PB naught, that is vapor pressure of pure liquid B. Now, according to this understanding, what should be the vapor pressure of the solution? As we have established here, assuming PV naught is larger than PA naught. Have clearly mentioned here that PV naught is larger than PA naught. B is a more volatile liquid than A. That's what we have assumed. Considering that vapor pressure of solution should be less than PA naught, vapor pressure of solution should be vapor pressure of solution should be more than PA naught, vapor pressure of solution should be less than PB naught. That means vapor pressure of solution can have its lowest value here, highest value here. That means the vapor pressure of solution varies like this. So this is PS, that is equal to PA plus PB. This would be the graph for any liquid solution that strictly obeys Raoult's law at a range of concentrations, at range of compositions, at range of relative proportions of solute as well as solvent. Now hope we are pretty clear with these three conclusions as well as this relation and this graph. I'll quickly repeat. Because both the components are volatile, both of them contribute to the vapor pressure of the solution. So vapor pressure of each of them in the solution can be called as partial vapor pressure. So partial vapor pressure of each of these components will be directly proportional to their respective mole fractions. That is the statement of Raoult's law for vapor pressure of liquid solutions. Now, therefore, PA is equal to PA naught into XA, PB is equal to PB naught into XB, and according to Dalton's law of partial pressures, partial pressure of solution will be sum of the partial vapor pressures of both the components in the solution. Now, expressing the vapor pressure of solution with respect to mole fractions of any one of the components, you will get these two relations. Either you can express it with respect to XB or you can express it with respect to XA. From these relations, we made three conclusions totally. Number one, vapor pressure of solution can be expressed in terms of mole fraction of any one of the components. Number two, the vapor pressure of solution is varying linearly with mole fraction of any one of the components. Number three, and whether that decreases with this or increases with this. Whether vapor pressure of solution decreases with mole fraction of a given component or increases with mole fraction of a given component depends on the relative values of the P naught values. That is, the values of vapor pressures of pure liquids A and B. And I have considered a context where B is more volatile than A. Then, if you substitute the values here, you will get PB naught minus PA naught positive. So, something added to PA naught, that means vapor pressure of solution is larger than PA naught. Then vapor pressure of solution is smaller than PB naught if you substitute in this relation. From which we can clearly understand that vapor pressure of solution relates to the vapor pressures of pure liquids based on their relative values. That can be clearly evident here. Just now we understood that vapor pressure of solution is greater than PA naught. So it will be always above the value of PA naught. Now you can see as the mole fraction of XA is increasing. You can see XA mole fraction is, mole fraction of A is increasing from this end to this end. And what is happening to vapor pressure of solution? Decreasing. Are you observing that? Whereas mole fraction of B is increasing from this end to this end. And what is happening to vapor pressure of solution? Increasing. Because I assumed that B is more volatile, because I assumed that PB naught is larger than PA naught, vapor pressure of solution decreases with mole fraction of A and increases with mole fraction of B. If there is a liquid where, or if the situation is that PA naught is larger than PB naught, that means A is more volatile, then vapor pressure of solution would have increased with mole fraction of A and would have decreased with mole fraction of B. That's what this sentence means. Whether vapor pressure of solution decreases or increases with the mole fraction of a given component depends on the relative values of PA naught and PB naught. And that is clearly illustrated in this particular graph drawn for vapor pressure versus mole fraction for variation of mole fractions of both the components represented together. Hope you have clearly understood this. I understand Vapor pressure of solutions of non-volatile solute is relatively easier, but this is not much tough if you follow it carefully. Now comes the question, in board exam if they ask you state Raoult's law, what would you state? Because already for vapor pressure of solution containing non-volatile solute you have two statements. And vapor pressure of solution containing liquid-liquid solution, you have another statement. So totally you got three statements of Raoult's law. Which one to write in the exam if they have asked you? Logic is simple. If they mention Raoult's law for solution containing non-volatile solute, write both those statements. If they mention Raoult's law for liquid-liquid solutions, write this statement and this mathematical expression, and if possible derive the expression for vapor pressure of solution also. Whereas if it doesn't mention anything, just says state Raoult's law and write mathematical expression, I would suggest write both. If the examiner is not clear and giving question with ambiguity, you should tell the examiner, your question has ambiguity, but my answer could have clarity, and put both the headings, write both statements and write both mathematical expressions. After all, you have 3 or 15 minutes for a 70 marks paper. In entrance exam, you won't get any such problems because the context will be very clearly presented to you. Is that clear? That is Raoult's law for vapor pressure of liquid-liquid solutions, the mathematical expressions, the conclusions, and the most important, graph. You can practice the graph for the vice versa case where PA0 is larger than PB0. I think simply if I change the labelings, it will be it. Okay, now go to entrance corner 3.5 of your EPL. In the last session, we have done question number 1 to 5 because they were related to vapor pressure of solution containing non-volatile solute. This session, let us solve the remaining problems which are based on vapor pressure of liquid-liquid solutions. Let's do that. Open your entrance corner 2.5. Look at question number 6. Benzene and toluene are the two liquids. I took benzene as A and toluene as B for convenience of writing further. Weight of benzene is 3.9 grams, weight of toluene is 4.6 grams, and pure liquid vapor pressures are given. Now he is asking you to calculate the vapor pressure of the mixture. Look at the options: 100, 120, 140, 200 millimeters of mercury, of course. Now, before we go for solving the question, just look at the options and think, are there any options we can eliminate? They are not the answers. Unfortunately, in this case, we have only one. What if, first of all, let me tell you which one. You think which one it should be. Of course, 200 cannot be your answer in this. Why not? Because vapor pressure of the solution must be lesser than the larger pure solvent vapor pressure, and larger than this, smaller than this. It must be in between this, right? So it can't be more than 150. So 200 cannot be the answer. Now what if there is an option in which three options are above 150 and only one is below 150? Obviously, you would select that as the answer without doing any further calculation. Please understand, the options could be like that. If examiner wants you to save your time, options will be like that. If examiner wants to force you to do the calculations, options will be like this. Now let us do it. See, there are two ways of solving this question. One, finding mole fractions of both the components and substituting in separate formula of PA and PB and adding PA and PB at the end. Or find mole fraction of any one and substitute in the formula of PS, that is total solution or mixture, vapor pressure of mixture. Either ways you do it. I am going with the second method. I will find mole fraction of any one and directly substitute in the expression for solution, vapor pressure of solution. Okay. Now, so first step is to find mole fraction. And to find mole fraction, you need to find number of moles, of course. So number of moles of A will be 3.9 by 78. 12 6 are 72 plus 6, 78. You can see clearly 3.9 by 78 will give you 0.05 moles. Then number of moles of B would be 4.6 divided by toluene will be C7H8, it's going to be. Toluene formula will be C7H8. So carbon 84, hydrogen 8, total it's going to be 92. So 4.6 by 92, oh, okay, even this is going to, sorry, 4.6 by 92, so even this is going to come 0.05. Okay, now the calculation is very easy. We need not waste a lot of time on this now. See, please understand, number of moles are equal, then mole fractions also will be equal, and mole fractions equal means how much? Half each. Now you can very easily solve it actually, but let me do the steps for your convenience. If you have understood by now, mole fraction will come half. XA will be equal to 0.05 divided by 0.05 plus 0.05, which comes out to be 0.5. Similarly, mole fraction of B also would be 0.5. Now, step 2, calculate vapor pressure of solution. Vapor pressure of solution formula, if you directly substitute, vapor pressure of solution is equal to, okay, PB naught, let me take in terms of XA here because I have calculated XA. We could have taken anything because the values are same here. XA and XB are same here. However, so PA naught minus PB naught into XA plus PB naught will be the formula. Okay, PA naught is 150 minus PB naught is 50 into 0.5 plus PB naught is 50. Now, 150 minus 50 is 100. 100 into half will be 50. 50 plus 50 will be 100. So, the vapor pressure of solution will be 100 millimeters of mercury. That is your option A. Or alternatively, you can calculate mole fraction of the other component also, which in this case I said comes 0.5. Then you find PA is equal to PA naught into XA, that is 150 into 0.5, that comes out to be 75. Then PB is equal to PB naught into XB, that is 50 into 0.5, that comes out to be 25. Then vapor pressure of solution is PA plus PB, 75 plus 25, that's equal to 100 millimeters of mercury. Whichever method is convenient for you, whichever formula is convenient for you to remember. Okay, that is question number 6. Question number 7, absolutely similar to question number 6. Actually, you can solve it for yourself and then only check the video. Please don't directly check for the solution. Okay. See, again, by the way, if you examine the options, examiner has not taken any chance. Every option is above 46.8 and below 105.2. So you have to do the calculation. There is no choice. But if you at least calculate mole fraction, you can tell the answer could be closest to which one. You can analyze that. So you need not solve the entire problem, by the way. Now, step 1, finding mole fraction of any component. And of course, if you find mole fraction of one component, 1 minus that will be the mole fraction of the other component. So solving should not be a problem at all. Now, to get mole fraction, you need number of moles of octane as well as number of moles of heptane as well as number of moles of octane. To get number of moles of heptane, the mass of heptane is given is 26 divided by heptane formula is C7H16. Okay, so 12 sevens 84 plus 16 comes exactly 100. So 26 by 100. Right. Similarly, octane formula is C8H18. 96 plus 18, which comes out to be exactly 114. So to get number of moles, you will have to divide 35 by 114. Okay, so 26 by 100, 0.26 of course. Then 35 by 114 gives you, so it will be 350. So 114 will divide 350 3 times. So you can take 0.3, 0.26 and 0.3. Then if you want to find mole fraction of XA, 0.26 divided by 0.26 plus 0.3, which will be 0.56. 0.26 by 0.56 comes approximately 0.45. 26 by 56 you can take. So comes approximately 0.45, the mole fraction of A. Now you can do the calculation. See, either you take xb is equal to 1 minus 0.45, which will be 0.55. Now in the second step, either you can substitute in the formula of vapor pressure of solution directly, or you can find both of them separately and add. I am substituting directly in the formula of vapor pressure of solution. So PS is equal to PA naught minus PB naught into XA plus PB naught. So that is 105.2 minus 46.8 into 0.45 plus 46.8. This is what you need to calculate. Now 105.2 minus 46.8, 4, 8, 5, so 58.4 approximately you are getting. So 58.4 into 0.45 plus 46.8. Now you can notice don't do further calculations. 58.4 is approximately half of it we are taking. So 46.8 is added approximately to 29 or 30 you can say. 46 plus 30 will be 76. So the closest answer is option D. Same way you can calculate PA separately, PB separately, add both and get the same answer also. So 6 and 7 absolutely similar questions. Go through question number 8. Some unknown liquids and label them as A and B. 100 grams of A is dissolved in 1000 grams of B. Please note that. And solution is exhibiting a vapor pressure of 475 torr. Torr is nothing but millimeters of mercury. Now molar mass of A is 140, molar mass of B is 180. And vapor pressure of pure liquid B is 500 torr. Then he is asking vapor pressure of pure liquid A. Options are given 280.7, 560, 780, 430. Now I want you to absorb the information and without putting pen on the paper, without doing any calculations, I want you to analyze and tell me the answer. Don't guess by the way, analyze and tell me the answer. Hope you have tried it out. Let me explain you without doing the calculation. Let me give away the answer. Then I will do the formal calculations. Don't worry. See here. And this is how you should think when you are answering an entrance question. Keep having a look at options and keep analyzing in your mind what could be an option, what could not be an option. Right? Now you know very well that vapor pressure of solution must be in between vapor pressures of pure liquids A and B. Right? It should be less than one of them and more than one of them. And already he has given you that vapor pressure of pure liquid B is 500, which is more than 475. That means already we got a liquid whose vapor pressure is more than, pure liquid vapor pressure is more than that of solution. So for another one, the answer, the value must be less than 475. So options B, option C ruled out. Because your answer must be less than 475, because one should have lesser vapor pressure for pure liquid than the solution. The other pure liquid should have more vapor pressure than the solution. He has already given more vapor pressure, so the other should be having less vapor pressure. Point 1 noted. So B and C are ruled out. Now you have two answers below 475, 430 and 280, and look at the values. Their molar masses are almost close to each other, 140, 180, not a big deal. Whereas the weights given are hugely different, 10 times different. That means you can clearly understand mole fraction of A will be much smaller than mole fraction of B. They will not be equal or closer to each other like 0.5, 0.5 or 0.45, 0.55. Likewise, what we got in the previous problems, it will not be like that. Its mole fraction will be somewhere close to 0.1 or 0.2. This will be close to 0.9 or 0.8. Because its mole fraction is much smaller, The vapor pressure of pure solvent should be much smaller than 475. So answer will be option A. Understood? If not understood, don't worry. Let us go with conventional method of solving it. But if you think and if you become stronger conceptually like this, you will be saving a lot of time. That's what I meant. So let us first calculate mole fraction. See, for getting mole fraction, you need number of moles. Number of moles of A would be 100 by 140. If you simplify 10 by 14, 0.14 sevens, then 1, approximately 0.714 you will get number of moles of A. Then number of moles of B, 1000 by 180, 100 by 18, 18 5s 90, then 5 more. So it comes recurring. So let me take 5.56. So mole fraction of XA will be equal to 0.714 divided by 0.714 plus 5.56, which comes out to be 6.274. 6 plus 1, 7, yeah, 6.274. Now 0.714 divided by 6.274, put a point here, then it becomes 71, goes almost 0.11. XA is equal to almost 0.11. So obviously XB will be 1 minus 0.11, which will be 0.89. Now you see, we got XB. You need PA naught. To get PA naught, you need PA. To get PA, you need PB. That's why PB is equal to PB naught into XB, right? PB naught he has given 500 tar, into XB you got 0.89. Multiply and do it, you will get 445 tar. Now PB you got. Now vapor pressure of solution must be equal to partial vapor pressure of A plus partial vapor pressure of B. So partial vapor pressure of A must be partial vapor pressure of solution minus partial vapor pressure. Now we want vapor pressure of A in pure state. For that, you take the relation PA is equal to PA naught into XA. Therefore, PA naught must be equal to PA by XA. PA you got 30 divided by 0.11. If it was 0.1, you would have got 300. Because it is 0.11, you will get 280.7, which I already told you in the beginning itself. Clear? So, it's a very simple problem if you deal with it conceptually. If you want to go numerically also, it's not an issue. Only thing is you have more steps to do. Is that clear? Let's move on to the last question. You can't get an easier question than question number 9. PA naught is given, PA is given, XA is asked. XA is equal to PA divided by PA naught. That is 32 divided by 40 millimeters of mercury. 8 4s 32, 8 5s, 4 by 5 will be 0.8. Very simple question, very quick answering question. With this, we have finished entrance corner 2.5. I know the questions were pretty easy and simple. Don't worry, more conceptually troubling questions we will solve when we take up objective exercise. However, whoever felt the questions easy, I'm happy with them. Whoever felt them a little difficult or tricky, please revise the concentration terms once, molarity, mole fraction, mass percentage, etc. Then come back and listen to the solutions. Then you solve yourself, you will get full confidence. If you are finding these problems a little troublesome, only problem is you are not clear with the concentration terms and mole concept. Otherwise, these formulae are simple, straightforward. Okay. See, let us understand another very important concept called vapor phase composition, from which often numericals are asked in entrances. Okay. Now, see, we have mixed two liquids, liquid state here, and they are evaporating, and some vapors are formed. Assume it is a closed vessel. Some vapors are formed. I'll assume I'm showing vapors of one liquid A as circles. and vapors of another liquid B as dots, let us say. So the mixture contains both the vapors of A as well as vapors of B. Now from Raoult's law, what the formula we wrote, PA is equal to PA naught into XA, PB is equal to PB naught into XB, what we have seen. What are the meanings of these terms exactly? I know you have understood by now. Let us revise it. This is partial vapor pressure exerted by A. Means whatever the circles I have drawn, they are vapor state molecules of A, right? So whatever the pressure these circles are exerting here. Similarly, what is PB? Whatever the pressure these dots are exerting here, because I am assuming vapor phase molecules of the liquid B are dots. Then what is PA naught, PB naught? These are the vapor pressures these liquids would have exerted if A was simply A here. Then its molecule, its vapor state molecules are exerting whatever pressure on it. When B was simply B here, and its vapor state molecules, whatever pressure they are exerting on it. That is PA naught and PB naught. Then what are XA and XB? XA is mole fraction of liquid A in the A plus B liquid mixture. XB is mole fraction of liquid B in the liquid A plus B mixture. Means in these relations what we have is mole fractions of the liquids in their liquid phase. Now same mixture at same temperature has evaporated, and this vapors contain vapors from both A and B, right? Now what is the mole fraction of components of A in vapor phase? What is the mole fraction of molecules of B in the vapor phase, which I will call it as XA dash and XB dash, because in this formula we are getting mole fraction of A in its liquid state, mole fraction of A in its liquid state and mole fraction of B in its liquid state. What about mole fraction of A in its vapor state, like these circles I am drawing here, and what about the mole fraction of B in its vapor state, which I will label them as XA dash and XB dash. Now this is the formula, I am deriving the formula for finding out mole fraction of components in their vapor phase. So if they simply ask you mole fraction of liquid A or mole fraction of liquid B, use this formula. Whereas if they ask you mole fraction of A or B in vapor phase, then what you should do? Last year from states of matter, from Dalton's law of partial pressures, you try to remember or revise it going back to your first year syllabus. Dalton's law of partial pressure states that if there is a mixture of non-reacting gases at a constant volume and temperature, then pressure of the mixture is equal, pressure exerted by the mixture is equal to sum of the partial pressures of each component gases inside the liquid, inside the mixture. That is what exactly Dalton's law of partial pressures means. Now from that relation called pressure of gas mixture is equal to partial pressures of sum of the partial pressures of all the component gases, PA plus PB plus PC and so on. From this relation we have derived an important relation that partial pressure of one of the components or gases, one of the component gases is equal to total pressure into mole fraction of that component gas. This was the derivation we have made in the last year's states of matter chapter. I repeat, partial pressure of one of the components in the mixture of non-reacting gases is equal to total pressure of the mixture into mole fraction of that component gas. This is the relation. Now, these are also a mixture of gases, right? Mixture of vapors, right? Therefore, if you apply it to this, partial pressure of one of the component, partial vapor pressure of one of the component liquids in its vapor phase is equal to total pressure of the solution, that is vapor pressure due to both the components, into mole fraction of that component in its vapor phase. Mole fraction of that component in its vapor phase. Now what do you need? Mole fraction of that component you need, because PA you can get from this formula, PB you can get from this formula. So if you want PA, if you want mole fraction of A in its vapor phase, you have to do PA divided by vapor pressure of solution. Now you know PA is given as vapor pressure of pure solvent into mole fraction in its liquid phase divided by PSC is given as, in terms of mole fraction of A only if you want to represent, then PSC is given as PA naught minus PB naught into XA plus PB naught. We have already arrived at this expression. By doing this, we are going to find out mole fraction of any one of the components in the vapor phase here. So it's simple. Using Raoult's law, you find out PA. And using Raoult's law, you find out PB and add both to get PS, or use this formula to get PS, however you are comfortable. And take the ratio PA divided by PS to get XA dash. Take the ratio PB divided by PS to get XB dash. That is vapor phase composition of liquid components in liquid-liquid solution, because both of them are evaporating and going to vapor phase. In vapor phase, what is the mole fraction of A and what is the mole fraction of B can be obtained from the values of partial vapor pressures of the liquids and the values of vapor pressures of pure liquids and mole fractions in the liquid state. Using these values, we can find out mole fraction in the vapor phase. Is that clear? This is very important formula. Based on this, we will solve questions during our objective exercise at the end of the chapter. Okay, you will get plenty of them in the objective exercise. Only thing we need to be careful is at the question, whether he is asking composition in the liquid phase or composition in the vapor phase. Okay, let's move on. So far, we had complete clarity on the behavior of solutions in terms of vapor pressure when we mix two liquids. And we have understood the very important quantitative relationship called Raoult's law clearly, right? As per that Raoult's law, how the partial vapor pressures of each component liquid should vary and how vapor pressure of the solution should be related to vapor pressures of pure liquids as well as mole fractions of the liquids in the solution. We have clearly understood in the form of a graph also. Now the question is, do all the liquid-liquid mixtures behave the same way? The answer is absolutely no. Then when do they behave the same way? And why they can't behave that way? And if they deviate, how do they deviate from Raoult's law? Based on that, we can classify the binary liquid solutions, that is liquid-liquid solutions, into ideal and non-ideal solutions, and there are totally 3 types. Let us understand them quickly in a comparative manner within the small space of this small board I have here. First, I will call them type 1 for our convenient references further. Type 1 are ideal solutions. Type 2 are non-ideal solutions with positive deviation from Raoult's law. Type 3 are non-ideal solutions with negative deviation from Raoult's law. Let us understand each of them individually and then we will be getting a comparative study almost. See, it is pretty clear that ideal solutions are the ones which follow Raoult's law exactly. That means PA must be equal to PA naught into XA exactly. PB must be equal to PB naught into XB exactly. That means the partial vapor pressure of one of the components should be equal to vapor pressure in its pure state into its mole fraction. Partial vapor pressure of other component should be exactly equal to vapor pressure of its pure state into its mole fraction in the solution. If it is exactly following like this, it is called an ideal solution. Now let us see. What is a non-ideal solution with positive deviation? First of all, non-ideal means both of them do not follow Raoult's law. What do you mean by positive deviation? What do you mean by negative deviation? Positive deviation means getting more vapor pressure than expected, Negative deviation means getting less vapor pressure than expected. That means in this case, PA will be less than the expected product. More positive, right? PA will be more than the expected product, that is PA naught into XA. Similarly, PB will be more than the expected product, that is PB naught into XB. Now I think you understood what is non-ideal solutions with negative deviation. PA is less than the product PB naught and PA naught and XA, and PB is less than the product PB naught and XB. So point number 1, ideal solutions will be behaving exactly according to Raoult's law. Non-ideal solutions with positive deviations will exhibit more partial vapor pressures than expected from the Raoult's law. In non-ideal solutions with negative deviation, the components exhibit lesser partial vapor pressure than expected from the Raoult's law. First point to be noted. Then the question comes, why? Why a set of liquid-liquid mixtures can behave ideal? Why a set of liquid-liquid mixtures should behave non-ideal with positive deviation, and why a set of them should behave non-ideal with negative deviation? The answer is, yesterday while we were discussing, two major factors influence the vapor pressure of a liquid. One is the nature of liquid, where nature of liquid in terms of intermolecular interactions we talked about. That is the major influencing factor. That way, a more volatile liquid, the one exhibiting more vapor pressure, will be having weaker interactions. The one exhibiting less vapor pressure, less volatile liquid, will be having stronger intermolecular interactions, we said. Second one was temperature, and third wrong one I took surface area, which I corrected in the beginning of this video. So keep the temperature aside, let us talk about the intermolecular interactions. See, after mixing, if they have to exhibit Raoult's law exactly, then the means there is no deviation, no change is happening. If that has to happen after mixing, means before mixing, whatever may be the strength of intermolecular forces individually between their particles, after mixing, the strength of intermolecular interactions between the particles of each other should also be same, which I can technically put it as solute-solute interactions must be same as solute-solvent interactions for both the liquids. Here, whatever the quantities I am taking, whichever may be the solute, whichever may be the solvent, or I can put it in an easier manner like this. AA interactions, BB interactions must be equal to AB interactions. Means strength of intermolecular forces between AA should be equal to AB, strength of intermolecular forces between BB should be equal to AB. Such that even after mixing, no new forces are developed or no existing forces are broken. Means strength of forces is not altered. So when solute-solute interactions are same as solute-solvent interactions, even after mixing, they will be behaving ideally, and then PA will be equal to PA naught into XA, PB will be equal to PB naught into XB. The mixture will follow Raoult's law exactly. Whereas, observe here, they are supposed to show more vapor pressure than expected. If they have to show more vapor pressure than expected, after mixing, the freedom should increase or freedom should decrease. Think peacefully. The freedom should increase. For the freedom to increase, the interparticle attractions would have become stronger or weaker. They would have become weaker. So please understand, for exhibiting partial deviation, solute-solvent interactions must be weaker than solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions. So here solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions are same as solute-solvent interactions. Whereas here solute-solvent interactions must be lesser than solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions. means after mixing the attraction should become weak. Means the particle should relatively be more independent than previous. When they become more independent than previous, they exhibit more partial vapor pressure than expected. Then they exhibit positive deviation. Now this is easy to understand. Illustrations will be given, don't worry. When illustrations are given, it becomes much easier. I will explain you that. Illustrations will be given. First, let us understand quickly the comparison. See, here in this case you can understand solute-solvent interactions must be greater than solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions. Then what happens? After mixing, the attractions have become stronger. Particles have become closer. As a result, the freedom of the molecules has decreased, so vapor pressure will be lesser than expected. Let me give you quick examples to make the things understandable. Say, I have mixed cyclohexane, say, with methyl cyclohexane. Let me take an example. Methyl cyclohexane, for example. Within cyclohexane molecules, between cyclohexane and cyclohexane molecules, what forces exist? London forces. Between methyl cyclohexane and methyl cyclohexane molecules, what forces exist? London forces. And molecular masses are also so close, just differing by some 15 maybe. Sorry, 14. And when they are mixed with each other, what forces do exist between them? London forces. Since molecular masses are also not too different, the strength of London forces also will be almost same even after mixing. So, assume solvent is cyclohexane, solute is methyl cyclohexane. Then, solvent-solvent interactions were also London forces. Solute-solute interactions were also London forces. After mixing, solute-solvent interactions are also London forces. As a result, no new forces are set up. The strength of the forces remains same. Hence, vapor pressure, partial vapor pressures will be as expected from the Raoult's law. Clear? Now, let us take the classic example of water mixed with ethanol. Water mixed with ethanol. See here. Water has intermolecular hydrogen bonds as the intermolecular interactions. You understand? And you know intermolecular hydrogen bonds are one of the strongest intermolecular forces. Now, because water doesn't have any kind of non-polar moiety within it, water undergoes extensive intermolecular hydrogen bonding. You should have studied in your first year that each water molecule can form intermolecular hydrogen bonds with 4 more water molecules, because each hydrogen can form intermolecular hydrogen bonds with oxygens of 2 molecules, and each oxygen can form intermolecular hydrogen bonds with one hydrogen of 2 different molecules. So likewise, intermolecular hydrogen bonding in water is so extensive that when you cool it, the forces become stronger and it forms cage-like structures. That's why ice expands. Anomalous expansion of water you would have studied in your school as well as in your first year. So the intermolecular hydrogen bonding in water is very, very, very strong for 2 reasons. One is high electronegativity difference between O and H, and second one is presence of no non-polar hydrocarbon radical or anything in this case. Now the forces were very strong. Now you mixed ethanol into it. No doubt it will be highly soluble and comes and forms intermolecular hydrogen bonds with water. Now I can show this as ethanol molecule. No doubt it comes and mixes with water nicely because it can also form intermolecular hydrogen bonds with water. But do you expect these intermolecular hydrogen bonds to be as strong as the previous? Absolutely not, because you have a non-polar hydrocarbon radical called C2H5. That's why intermolecular hydrogen bonds in ethanol are much weaker compared to water. Now when that is coming and forming intermolecular hydrogen bonds with water, automatically the strength of the forces will be weak. So in this case, solute-solvent interactions are weaker than solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions. As a result, relative freedom of the molecules increases. That's why vapor pressure will be greater. So for vapor pressure to be larger than expected from Raoult's law, attraction forces must be weaker. Please understand that. Now come to this category. Let me take the classic example of, say, acetone and chloroform, the two liquids mixed with each other. Please observe. This is your acetone. So the only possibility for intermolecular forces here is dipole-dipole forces, because there is polarity in CO bond. Electropositive carbon and electronegative oxygen. Similarly, you take chloroform, CHCl3. It is having the bonds with electronegativity difference, polar covalent bonds, and at the same time the net dipole moment will not be zero. That's why the force, the kind of forces, the kind of molecule this is polar molecule. Hence between polar molecules what kind of forces exist? Dipole-dipole forces. So acetone molecules were holding each other with dipole-dipole forces. Chloroform molecules were holding each other with dipole-dipole forces. Up to this is fine. This cannot exhibit any intermolecular hydrogen bonding because there is no hydrogen attached to oxygen. And this cannot exhibit intermolecular hydrogen bonding. There is no possibility at all, because intermolecular hydrogen bonding is possible when there is fluorine, nitrogen, oxygen. Now each one of them were held by dipole-dipole forces. Now when you mix the two liquids, what happens? There is an electronegative oxygen coming in close vicinity with the electropositive hydrogen of chloroform. As a result, in space, they will be entering into hydrogen bonding. As a result, stronger forces will be set up between the molecules of acetone and chloroform. Now, previously dipole-dipole forces. I have already, while I was teaching you the fundamentals in the beginning of this commencement of this chapter, that is in session 1, I was arranging the interparticle forces in the decreasing order of their strength. And remember, I have kept intermolecular hydrogen bonds above dipole-dipole forces. So, intermolecular hydrogen bond is a stronger interparticle interaction compared to dipole-dipole force. As a result, when you mix both the liquids, particles come much closer than they were previously. As a result, the freedom of the molecules is decreasing, so they exhibit less vapor pressure than expected from Raoult's law. How do we experimentally observe and justify these facts? We can experimentally observe from the values of delta V mixing and delta H mixing. If you remember, while I was talking about solubility of ionic solids into liquids, I reminded you the fact that particles come closer, forces are set up, then energy will be released, exothermic process. Particles go far away, forces are broken, energy will be absorbed, endothermic process. I told you already. So here please observe, after mixing, any new forces are set up? No. That's why after mixing, energy will not be absorbed or released. So delta H mixing will be 0. Point number 1. Point number 2. Forces before and after mixing were same. As a result, the molecules will mix with each other without any new spaces created. So net volume will be same as sum of the volumes of two liquids. That means, say I took 20 ml of A and 40 ml of B. Then the mixture will have exactly 60 ml, not 60.01 ml or 60.05 ml or 60.09 ml, whatever, no increase. Or it will not be 59.95 ml or 59.94 ml, no. It will be 60 ml only. Understood? So delta V mixing also will be 0. Whereas coming here, existing previous forces were stronger. After mixing, such strong forces are broken. For example, you take this example only. Intermolecular hydrogen bonds between water and water are broken. I agree intermolecular hydrogen bonds are formed between ethanol and water. Now breaking of water-water hydrogen bonds will absorb energy. Breaking bonds absorbs energy. Formation of the new intermolecular hydrogen bonds would have released energy, but will there be net absorption will be greater or net release will be greater? you are right. Net absorption will be greater because stronger bonds are broken. Weaker bonds are formed. So net absorption will be greater. So delta H mixing will be positive because there is absorption of energy, because the existing stronger bonds are broken. Stronger interactions are broken. Are you understanding? And number 2, delta V mixing. See here. Previously, in each sample, particles were closely packed. Now, after mixing, the particles are relatively loosely packed. Means space between the particles is increasing. As a result, the net volume will be slightly more than what you expect. That means, say I mix 20 ml of A and 40 ml of B, you might end up getting 60.02 ml of the mixture, or 60.05 ml of the mixture, or 60.12 ml of the mixture, whatever the case might be. Depending upon how weak the attractions have become, so much the volume will increase. So delta V mixing will be positive. Are you understanding? Now I think it is easy for you to understand this. Because the new forces are set up, interactions have become stronger, particles have come much closer. When they come closer, they should lose energy. When they go away, they should gain energy. So, because the particles have come much closer, energy will be released. Exothermic process. That's why delta H mixing will be negative, because it's an exothermic process. At the same time, because particles are coming closer, net volume after mixing will be lesser than expected. So, delta V mixing also will be negative. Means, if you expect 60 ml, it might become 59.93 ml or 59.97 ml or 59.94 ml, whatever the case might be. Are you understanding? So quickly, ideal solutions are the solutions which obey Raoult's law at wide range of concentrations, such that delta V mixing, that is change in volume after mixing, and delta H mixing, enthalpy change after mixing, will be 0. That is possible when solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions are same as the solute-solvent interactions after mixing. Illustration is given. To a liquid-liquid mixture exhibits non-ideal solutions with positive deviation. That means the partial vapor pressure of each component will be greater than expected from Raoult's law. That is possible when solute-solvent interactions are weaker than solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions, such that energy will be released, energy will be absorbed for mixing. So delta H mixing will be positive, and volume will be slightly more than expected after mixing. So delta V mixing will be positive. When solute-solvent interactions are stronger than solute-solute and solvent-solvent interactions, new attractions are set up such that there is release of energy, exothermic process, delta H mixing will be negative, and volume of the mixture will be slightly lesser than expected. So delta V mixing will be negative, and such that the partial vapor pressure of components will be less than that expected from Raoult's law. Then you call them non-ideal solutions with negative deviation. Illustrations are given. Is that clear? That is the classification of binary liquid solutions into 3 types. Type 1 ideal solutions, type 2 non-ideal solutions with positive deviation, type 3 non-ideal solutions with negative deviation. Hope writing definitions is not an issue for you. Exhibit Raoult's law at wide range of temperatures. Show more partial vapor pressures than expected from Raoult's law. Show less partial vapor pressure than expected from the Raoult's law. Write those sentences, that becomes the definition. Is that clear? Now what we will do, we will strengthen our understanding of this classification into ideal, non-ideal solutions with positive and non-ideal solutions with negative. For my further reference, I will call them type 1, type 2, type 3. Further, we'll strengthen understanding of this classification further by taking more number of examples of liquid-liquid mixtures. That is given in one of your learning exercises. Okay. Before going to learning exercise, let me give you graphical comparison between the 3 types, which I just missed. See, type 1, that is ideal solutions. I have already drawn it, it's just a repetition. Assume XA is 1 and XA is 0 at this end. XB is 0 this end and XB is 1 at this end, that is mole fraction in the x-axis and vapor pressure in the y-axis. Previously I was assuming PA naught is smaller than PB naught, that's why you got a graph like this and vapor pressure of solution was in the center. Means this is PA naught, this is PB naught, and this curve represents vapor pressure of solution, that is PA plus PB. All these points represent PA, all these points represent PB at various compositions of XA and XB. Right? This was the graph you got for ideal solutions. Whereas, if you take non-ideal solutions with positive deviation, let me show it here itself in the same setup. Non-ideal solutions with positive deviation. See here, the vapor pressure of solution is supposed to be greater than the one having lower pure liquid vapor pressure, and it is supposed to be smaller than the one having higher pure liquid vapor pressure. So it must be in between these two. Highest value must be PB naught, lowest value must be PA naught if PB naught is greater than PA naught, as I have already explained to you. Now what happens? At all compositions, this one liquid A shows more vapor pressure than expected. At all compositions, liquid B shows more vapor pressure than expected. Therefore, at all compositions, solution also shows more vapor pressure than expected. Then it will be type 2, non-ideal solution with positive deviation. Whereas, for the same labeling of x and y axis, if this is supposed to be the graph of ideal solutions, PA naught, PB naught, etc., then at all compositions, A exhibits lower vapor pressure than expected, B exhibits higher vapor pressure than expected, lower vapor pressure than expected, such that vapor pressure of solution also will be lower than expected at all concentrations, at all compositions. Then you call it type 3, that is non-ideal solution with negative deviation. Means logic is simple. Number 1, the variation is not linear. You must have noticed by the curves I have drawn. Number 1, variation is not linear. Number 2, at all compositions, the vapor pressures are more than expected. That's how we draw graphs for non-ideal solutions with positive deviation, non-ideal solutions with negative deviation. Clear? Now let us go to learning exercise 2.7. Open it. More examples to illustrate and understand when it will be what kind of liquid mixtures will make it ideal, what kind of liquid mixtures will make it type 2 and type 3. This is a very good illustrative exercise. He has given 2 liquids in each row and he is asking this liquid contains what interactions right now, this liquid contains what interactions right now, and after mixing what might become to the interactions, what kind of interactions may be set up. And based on that, whether these new interactions are stronger than these or weaker than these, we have to understand and decide whether delta H mixing will be 0 or positive or negative. Same, delta V should be 0 or positive or negative, and decide whether it is type 1, that is ideal, or type 2, non-ideal with positive deviation, or type 3, non-ideal with negative deviation. That is the task. Okay, let us go for it. See, benzene has London forces. Toluene also has London forces because both are absolutely non-polar substances. See, repeatedly interparticle forces discussion is coming up, so you have to be very strong at that. Okay. Then after mixing both of them also, new forces will also be London forces. So both delta H and delta V mixing will be 0 and it will be ideal solutions type 1. Hope you have understood. More examples to come, things become better and better, don't worry. Now, between acetone molecules, there will be dipole-dipole forces. Because acetone is a polar molecule. I have already explained you just now. Benzene, just now we established it's a non-polar, so London forces. Now, one having dipole-dipole forces, the other having London forces, when they are mixed, you will get dipole induced dipole forces. Dipole induced dipole forces. Now you see, there was a liquid called acetone which had dipole forces, relatively strong forces, into which you have added benzene which has London forces. Now between them new forces set up called dipole induced dipole forces are weaker than the dipole forces. Means existing forces are broken. That means interactions are weaker than previous. When interactions are weaker, when freedom increases, existing forces are broken, energy will be absorbed, delta H mixing will be positive and volume will be more than expected. So these are type 2 non-ideal solutions with positive deviation, because the acetone had strong dipole forces. When you add benzene, they become weak dipole induced dipole forces. Is that clear? Then N-heptane, pure hydrocarbon, London forces, N-hexane, pure hydrocarbon, London forces. After mixing also London forces, so no change in enthalpy or volume, hence they will also be, two liquids N-heptane and N-hexane will form ideal solution. So please try to understand what kind of mixtures will form ideal and what kind of mixtures will form non-ideal. Diethyl ether, again ethers are like this. In ketones you have got C double bond O, in ethers you have got oxygen, otherwise both sides are alkyl groups, so ethers are like this. So there is polarity between carbon-oxygen bond, so ethers will be having dipole force. Chloroform, as I told you already, also has dipole force. Now like I explained in case of acetone and chloroform case, here also the hydrogen of chloroform can form intermolecular hydrogen bonds with oxygen of diethyl ether. So dipole forces have now turned into intermolecular hydrogen bonds which are stronger. When forces become stronger, vapor pressure becomes lesser. So because forces have become stronger, particles have come closer than previous, energy will be released, so delta H will be negative, volume will be decreased, delta V will be negative. So these are third type, non-ideal solutions with negative deviation. Moving on, water and ethanol I have already explained you. Okay, they will be type 2 positive deviation, because water has intermolecular hydrogen bonds. Ethanol also has intermolecular hydrogen bonds, no doubt, but these will be weaker than the previous, those in water. So new forces are also intermolecular hydrogen bonds, but they are weaker intermolecular hydrogen bonds. As a result, this will be positive, this will be positive, and they will be type 2. Now comes water and nitric acid, very interesting story. Water, the intermolecular interactions in water are hydrogen bonds, we have already established it. In nitric acid, of course, there is possibility for hydrogen bonds within nitric acid. Whereas when you add nitric acid to water, nitric acid undergoes ionization in water, you know very well. Now the new interactions developed will be ion dipole interactions, remember? This becomes H plus, will be surrounded by water dipoles through its negative ends, and this becomes nitrate NO3 minus, and it will be surrounded by water molecules through its positive ends. And I have already told you ion dipole interactions are stronger than hydrogen bonds. Why? See, in hydrogen bonds it is partial charges that are holding the particles together, whereas here one of the particles has real charges. So electrostatic forces will be stronger comparatively. So ion dipole interactions are stronger. So they have formed stronger bonds, so energy will be released, volume will be lesser than expected, and it will be type 3. So the mixture of water and nitric acid will be type 3. Moving on, chlorobenzene, dipole forces only because of a CCl bond. Here also dipole forces due to polarity of CBr bond. After mixing also, same dipole forces would be there. No change in anything, so they will form ideal solutions. Molecular mass is also closer. Okay, then moving on, acetaldehyde carbon disulfide, similar to this one. Acetaldehyde has dipole forces because CO bond is polar, C double bond O is polar. Carbon disulfide is absolutely non-polar, because though carbon sulfur bond could be polar, the net dipole moment will be 0. Okay, so carbon disulfide is non-polar, so has London forces. The liquid with dipole-dipole forces is mixed with the liquid with London forces, then the new forces set up will be dipole-induced dipole forces. Because the new forces are dipole-induced dipole forces, the new forces are weak, so energy will be absorbed for breaking the existing strong forces. So delta H will be positive, volume will be more than expected, so they will be type 2 non-ideal solutions with positive deviation. Then lastly, acetic acid contains intermolecular hydrogen bonds, but that will be in the form of dimers. Means 2 acetic acid molecules will be combining to form a dimer. Pyridine structure is this. It is a heterocyclic compound with nitrogen at one of the positions of ring. Now you see, pyridine should have obviously dipole-dipole forces only. Pyridine has dipole-dipole forces. Acetic acid has intermolecular hydrogen bonds between two molecules. Now when you mix both of them, what happens? They will enter into more extensive intermolecular hydrogen bonding, because electronegative nitrogen of this can attract the electropositive hydrogen of this, and more molecules will be entering into intermolecular hydrogen bonding. In acetic acid, only two molecules are involved in hydrogen bonding. Here, more molecules will involve in hydrogen bonding, so strengths become stronger. When attraction forces become stronger, energy will be released, volume will be decreased, they will be type 3, that is non-ideal solutions with negative deviation. Understood? Very nice illustrative exercise. Now you can take these examples. Benzene plus toluene you can put under type 1. Acetone plus benzene you can put under type 2. Likewise diethyl ether and chloroform you can put under type 3, and prepare your own list of examples for type 1, type 2, type 3. Okay. Now if you observe the board, I am leaving you with few more examples for each category. Few examples we have understood from the exercise which we did just now. I am leaving you with few more examples. So those examples and these examples, add all of them, keep a list in your notes. I am very confident for any entrance you want to appear or any exam you want to appear, these examples would be more than enough. Now I am leaving you with two homeworks. One, in these examples, in each of these examples, I have already given you hint that which category they belong to. Now, you need to identify the justification for it. Like, why a mixture of N-butyl chloride and N-butyl bromide must be ideal. Why a mixture of, say, acetone plus carbon disulfide should be non-ideal with positive deviation. Why a mixture of acetone and chloroform we have already explained. Okay. And why a mixture of water and HCl, or why a mixture of water and acetic acid must be non-ideal mixture with negative deviation. Likewise, what will be the existing forces and what will be the new forces, and why it is showing such a deviation or why it is showing such an ideality. This you need to recognize. That is your first homework for best understanding. And you will be practicing all the examples already, so that, because why I am asking you to do this, why I am insisting so much is, out of the following mixture, liquid mixtures, which one is a non-ideal solution with negative deviation? Or which one is an ideal solution? Or which one is a non-ideal solution with positive deviation? They will ask you and give you four options to answer such questions. Or they give you a mixture and ask you what kind of solution it is. To answer such questions, you must be very clear in analyzing it, right? So if you could analyze all these examples and keep it in your brain, whenever such questions appear, you can analyze yourself. Some questions you might see in your weekend exam also this weekend. Moving on. Second homework I am leaving you is home exercise 2.3, which contains numericals based on Raoult's laws. Do these two homeworks and get ready strongly for the weekend test that is coming up. You will have portions up to this for your weekend test from tomorrow on, day after tomorrow, that is Sunday. Okay. All the best. See you on Monday.